Greetings, folks. This is Book of Mormon Chiasmus. Today I'm going over 2nd Nephi, chapter 9, verse 28. This is a fun little chiasmus that is embedded in the midst of a larger chapter that has a lot of structure to it. And it appears that in the Book of Mormon, the sermons and the things that were presented to the people as a sermon or a discourse tend to have much more Hebrew parallel and chiasmus forms within them. And I think it's probably because they spent time making these addresses, and then really stylized them before they gave them. And one of the thoughts is 2nd Nephi chapter 9 was given by Jacob the prophet, and it may have occurred at the Day of Atonement on one of the festival days. And so this address may have been pre-made to be very stylized. So um, in this, what we see on screen here, there's kind of a goldish looking highlight. Oh, the cunning plan of the evil one, and then oh. I highlighted it that way because within the chapter there are several break points within the whole chapter where he uses that word oh. And so sometimes he says, "Oh, my beloved brethren," and other times he's talking about other things, but that seems to be a section break. And it's important because the language of the Hebrews did not have any commas, punctuation, or paragraph breaks. And so, in order to identify a subject change or a subject continuation, they used repetition. And so, I think within the whole chapter, the idea these O's make a separation between concepts. And so, that's why I've highlighted it here. And so next you can see a chiasmus form. There's an A, B, and a C, then a C prime, B prime, A prime, and then so that was a chiasmus that I learned from a paper that you can find at BYU called Hebrew. Let's see, Hebrew poetic parallelisms in the Book of Mormon, and they just kind of went through the entire book and published what they found, and I kind of took that as the beginning from it and then added a little bit to it. I added the end of the B and the C that's in verse 29 because I think it is part of the structure. So the verse part in the A, you have the vainness and the frailties and the foolishness of men. So that's kind of simple synonymous. They're sort of stating the same thing in three different ways: vainness, frailties, and foolishness. And that's not really the way English people talk. They kind of use one word to describe things, but in Hebrew, the more words you can use, kind of better identifies um, the concepts or the topics. And Isaiah did that an awful lot. So you have vainness, frailties, and foolishness. And then you can see in the A prime, it does match with the foolishness term that's down in the turnaround. So then moving on to the B is when they are learned, they think they are wise. And so the idea is that the wisdom and the learning of men, they think they are wise. And if you look at the B prime, um, they thought they were wised up above, and supposing they know of themselves. So they think they're wise, and they suppose they know of themselves. That is a match. Um, and then their wisdom. And what's interesting is Jacob is contrasting truly being wise with foolishness. So in the B up above, they think they are learned, but their wisdom is foolishness. So the difference between learned and foolishness is a contrasting parallelism that turns things around, but it also matches the A term up above because you do get foolishness up above there. So the center term, the center of the chiasmus, is the double repetition of the concept of they hearken not and they set it aside. And what are they hearkening not to and setting aside? Unto the counsel of God the Father and unto the counsel of the Son, Jesus Christ. And so when you become wise as to things of the world, it tends to make you think you are smarter than you are, and then you disregard the counsel of God the Father and of the Son, Jesus Christ. And when you disregard the counsel, then what you think makes you wise actually makes you foolish, and it doesn't profit you. Um, And then in the repetition of the B and C down below, you have a contrasting idea, which is, but to be learned is good if you hearken unto the counsel of God. So I added that last little part to what I learned about, and I think it sometimes in chiasmus you do get something at the end that reinforces what was in the chiasmus. I've seen that many times in the Psalms, and so I think it's an important subject. So they do contrast um, the foolishness of above with when you are learned, it is good if you hearken unto the counsel of God. And then that idea that unto the counsel of God is repeated very strongly in both the center portion of the chiasmus and also, I don't know what this is called, the rebuttal or the extended. There's probably a name for it. I don't know what it is, but I really like this fun little chiasmus in Second Nephi chapter 9. I think it's very artistically put together. And then I should mention I have underlined and italicized the words "and they shall perish" because that is part of a larger structure within the chapter 9. There's 10 woes that are pronounced by Jacob, and each one has kind of a curse. And there's a few that they shall perish, a few that their sins will be exposed, and he's talking about the idea of both spiritual death and physical death, and the resurrection, and that those who do not repent of their sins, they die as per things pertaining to spirituality, as well as they die a physical death. We will be resurrected, but they die spiritually. And so that's what he's really trying to warn about is don't die spiritually. You need to hearken unto the counsels of God, the wisdom of the world. That you think you're wise, but if you don't hearken to the counsel of God, then you are foolish. So this is a pretty little chiasmus. I think it's a helpful testimony of Joseph Smith because he just dictated this to a scribe. There's a lot of really interesting parallel structure within this, and it would be difficult to just whip this out and dictate this as well as the hundreds of other chiasmuses in the Book of Mormon. So just kind of thought this might be interesting to you. If you want to see the larger structure, you can look at bookofmormonchiasmus.com. I have the whole chapter there, but here's just kind of a quick little chiasmus for today. Thanks a bunch. We'll see you. Bye.